Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on Audi's brand new facelifted S3. I'm out here in beautiful southern Germany. That behind me is Austria, so I'm right on the border. And I've been here for the past 24 hours, although until about 15 minutes ago, the weather has been horrific. In fact, Audi had to put all of the press cars onto smaller winter wheels and winter tyres. In 2020, Audi launched the fourth generation A3 and S3, and this is essentially the updated version of that. It was codenamed the 8Y. And I'm really fortunate that my other half, Lou, has had a number of 8Y generation S3s as company cars over the past 3 or so years. In fact, she has one parked on the drive at the moment. I spend a lot of time in that car, so I know it very well. And I think that puts me in a good place to compare the outgoing S3 with the new updated version. All the B-roll you're seeing is essentially this car on the bigger 19-inch wheels and summer tyres, and I'm sure you agree they definitely suit it better. They're going to be priced from about £47,000 in the UK, which is a lot of money for a hot hatch. But when you compare that to something like Volkswagen's Mark 8 Golf R, well, that's just about right. And dare I say it, this is actually slightly better value, on paper at least. Before we look at the differences underneath the skin, because there have been quite a few changes, let's look at the skin itself. And starting with the front end, well, we have a redesigned grille, which I don't mind, and a redesigned 4 rings, which I don't particularly like. I think they look awful in pictures. They look like a pimple or something, and in real life they do look a little bit better. And in the 24 hours that I've had this car, maybe I'm getting slightly more used to them, but I much prefer the older style rings. I don't think I'm ever going to grow to love those. In terms of the headlights, well, they look essentially the same, but you now have things like 4 different options for your daytime running lights. And surprise, surprise, when you get around the back of the car, there's also been a few changes and updates, a new diffuser, etc. This particular press car is in matte Daytona grey. Looks fantastic. Something else we haven't talked about yet is the fact that there is no S3 badge on the grille. Normally, I would like that subtlety. I like debadging most of my cars. I don't like M badges everywhere or S badges everywhere. But when I walked up to this car in the car park at the airport yesterday, I genuinely thought they'd give me an A3 until I walked around the back and I saw the quad pipes and the S3 badge. And then I realised they hadn't got it wrong. It sits 15 millimetres lower than the regular A3. They've made a number of suspension changes compared to the outgoing S3 by replacing things like the pivot bearings, which has given this newer model a lot more negative camber, and therefore, in theory at least, a sharper turn-in and better handling characteristics. They've installed an entirely new electronic stabilisation system, or ESC, to this very latest model. They've fitted bigger discs and bigger calipers on the front axle. And when we get around the back, well, this is perhaps where the biggest changes have gone on. They've lifted the very trick torque splitter rear differential out of the current RS3, and they've dropped it into this car. And although some of the features and functions on that trick torque splitter rear axle are a bit gimmicky, some of them really improve the current generation RS3. So I'm expecting the same with this. This particular press car has the optional Akrapovic exhaust. It is just the rear box, so essentially OPF back. But you can option it on your UK car, but it will set you back about £4,150. I forgot to mention they have added some branding and model designation here on the B pillar. I personally think it looks quite smart. Under the bonnet we have the now very familiar Volkswagen Group 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, although in this very latest guise from Audi it produces 333 horsepower, so that's 23 horsepower up on the outgoing S3, and 420 newton meters of torque, again 20 newton meters up on the outgoing model. When you combine that with the slightly faster shifting 7-speed dual clutch gearbox and the Quattro all-wheel drive system with that new trick rear diff, Audi claimed this would do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 4.7 seconds, which is a tenth of a second quicker than the outgoing model. But to me, in the limited time that I've had this car, it definitely feels noticeably faster. So I'm looking forward to testing those times with my Racebox Mini. They've also played around with things to further eliminate any low down turbo lag. So essentially the initial pickup should be much better, especially in the punchier modes. And there are some new drive modes, which we'll talk about when we jump inside. Well, it feels very familiar to me. It's not radically different, but they have made a few, let's call them quality changes. They've listened to people complaining about their S3s, specifically the RS3 in the UK, with the lack of interior trim options, and they have improved a few things. So we have double stitching in places where there used to be single stitching. We've got nice improved door cards with Alcantara, although I think Audi call it Dynamica. And in fact, these ambient panels light up in, I think it's 30 different color options. I'm sure that's going to appeal to the younger audience and is very similar to what BMW offer you in your 2 Series Coupe. The biggest improvement, as far as I'm concerned, is these lovely aluminium paddles. Audi and the Volkswagen Group in general have been guilty of fitting some pretty low rent plastic paddles, even in cars like the R8 rear wheel drive. So it's nice to see these in here. They visually look better and they feel so much nicer to touch. And that's really important. If you're buying a premium product like an Audi, you want your touch points to feel really good. And I have to say, even though that probably only cost them a few extra euros, it's a very, very good place to throw that extra bit of cash. This particular press car has a carbon woven inlay, and I believe that's going to be standard on the Vorsprung model in the UK. The base trim car will come with Alcantara or Dynamica. We were looking at one in their temporary showroom yesterday, and I have to say, again, it's really nice, and it does make the cabin feel a little bit better in terms of overall quality. Things that I'm not over the moon about are the shifter button, knob, block, whatever you want to call it. You've got lots and lots of physical buttons still, which I absolutely love. If we fire the engine up and I want my seat heating on, which I do because it's currently 2 degrees outside, I just press that button. Look at that. Magic. So easy. You don't need to go through loads of touchscreen menus to get that activated. And that's the same with all of the climate control. It's very easy to use. You've got your drive select mode down here. What you don't have on the S3 is the RS button that you get in the RS3. That's quite handy to cycle through your favorite drive modes. But you do have an individual mode in here. While we're talking about modes, let's bring them up, because we not only have efficiency, comfort, auto, dynamic and individual, which we did have in the pre-facelift car, we also now have, if I go into dynamic, we have dynamic plus. And that essentially gives you the most driver focus mode, apparently. It doesn't turn all of the stability control, traction control off. It puts it into a sportier setting, but it does mean that we take advantage of that torque splitter rear differential, and it should give us the feeling that the car rotates more in tighter bends in first and second gear, etc., sending more power and torque to the outside wheel on the rear axle, and that in turn should slip it a little bit and make the car feel a lot more agile. But I found in cars like the current RS3, where that axle has come from, when you put it in dynamic and you turn all of the traction aids off, that's when the car feels most balanced and most natural. You join me literally 10 minutes later. I put the cameras in the car and it started to rain again, and I'm sure there's probably snow on its way because it's only a couple of degrees outside. Thankfully, yesterday in my 1 hour window of sunshine, I decided to film some in-car footage because I knew the weather wasn't looking great. So let's cut back to yesterday, and then you can join me back here in the rain and I can give you my conclusion. I found a beautiful, dynamic and quiet road, so I thought it'd be a brilliant place to test out the driving dynamics of this facelifted S3. Unfortunately though, as we talked about in the intro, this particular car is running winter wheels and, more importantly, winter tyres. And these aren't 285 section Alpine 5s like I had on my M3 Touring very recently. These are 225 section winter tyres, which means they move around a lot. I haven't had this car for long, but I can tell you that we're not going to discover too much about its improved handling on these wheels and tyres, because you just lose that edge and you can feel it moving around a lot on the rubber blocks, especially as it's 9 degrees. I've just been on the Autobahn, there's temperatures in the tyres. But I can tell you that the current S3, or the car that this essentially replaces, is really good dynamically. And from the changes that we've discovered they've made to this car, like the improved suspension componentry, the added negative camber on the axles, that trick torque splitter diff on the rear axle, well, I know it's going to handle better than the current one. And that's really good. See if we can discover any of it. First thing to talk about, the turn-in's really keen. Yes, straight away you're losing feel and you're losing the front end, and that's just down to the winter rubber. But I can feel beneath that the car is really keen and eager to change direction. And it does feel sporty. It feels like a hot hatch should feel. As always in places like Germany, I can't really talk about ride quality because, well, their roads are as smooth as silk. They're absolutely beautiful, especially compared to a UK road. And I'm sure the stiffest sports or supercar would feel relatively good out here. What I can talk about accurately is this new and improved and updated engine. I spend a lot of time in Lou's 2023 pre-facelift S3, and I know that car very well. I've done thousands of miles in it over the past year or so. And actually, just a couple of days ago, we went away for the weekend, and I must have done about 250 miles in that car. I did that on purpose, didn't take the M3 Touring, because I wanted some seat time in that car so that I could give you accurate back-to-back feedback from when I jumped in this. And pulling away from Munich airport earlier today, you could notice the pickup, the initial pickup is 30-40% better straight away, straight out of the box. Those turbos just seem to spool up so much quicker. They're there, they're ready, they're preloaded, I think Audi Sport call them, and they really are. They feel night and day better than the pre-facelift car. Then you combine that maximum torque figure that's available from 2,100 RPM all the way up to 5,500, so flat maximum torque. And at 5,500, you basically get maximum power for another 1,000 RPM or something. So when you rev it out, you've got that torque, then you've got that power, you change and it just keeps going. It's really, really rapid. I can't imagine that this is much slower than the current RS3, and I know that car has an extra 67 horsepower, but it also weighs a chunk more. Let's test out this car's claimed acceleration figures. Audi say it would do the 0 to 62 sprint in 4.7 seconds. My Racebox Mini is ready to go, and that's going to measure us from 0 to 60 miles an hour. I'm in dynamic and I've got all the traction control systems switched off. Left foot hard down the brake, right foot on the accelerator, launch control program activated. Here we go. Oh, so strong off the line. And there we go. 4.24 seconds to 60 miles an hour. That is really, really quick. You could add a tenth of that to 62, which still makes it nearly half a second quicker than Audi claim. The gearbox is definitely improved, especially when you're in Dynamic or Dynamic Plus. The changes up and down the box are noticeably quicker, and thankfully, something that is quite rare on DSG equipped cars, if you're in manual and you're using these new and improved aluminium paddles, put your foot down in, say, second gear, it hits the limiter, which is refreshing because so many DSG equipped cars over the years from Volkswagen and Audi, when you hit that soft limiter, it changes gear, and that has always annoyed me because the limiter is there for a reason, it's to protect the engine. If you're hitting the limiter, you're not doing any damage to the engine or the gearbox, but you want to be able to at least hit that limiter when you're in manual, because otherwise, what is the point? It gets really annoying on a good road when you're pushing on, and it gets extremely annoying if you're to take your S3 out on track. But I'm happy to report that in this latest facelifted car, it stays in gear when you want it to stay in gear. Something else we can talk about is the brakes. Wow. Again, straight away, as soon as I touched them for the first time leaving the airport, you could notice the extra bite they have. They feel so much more powerful. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I tried to cover as much as I could. I think the bottom line is, once I get back to the UK, I'm going to be speaking to the Audi UK press team and asking for one of these as soon as they get one on fleet, try it on summer tyres, and then I can compare it back to back with Lou's one that is sitting at home. 50 grand is a lot of money no matter which way you look at it, and I'm sure the Vorsprung model with some extra options ticked is going to set you back probably closer to 55, if not a little bit more. But as we know, car prices have gone through the roof over the past 18 to 24 months, so I'm not going to dwell on the price too much. What I am going to talk about is comparing it to the outgoing model. And as far as I'm concerned, maybe aside from the grille and the rings on the front, I think they've improved the S3 in every area. It's faster, it slows down better, the interior feels slightly higher rent. I love these little paddles, they do make such a difference, and I'm sure if you own one of these, that would be exaggerated further. And although I haven't really managed to uncover the improved driving dynamics, I can see from just walking around this car that it has more negative camber, especially on the front axle. And I know with that super trick rear diff, which I'm sure would have cost Audi a lot of money to install in the S3, well, that's all going to add together to surely give a better and more enjoyable, more dynamic driving experience. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Keep an eye out for more S3 content coming to the channel during the summer months. Please make sure you do subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I don't like asking people to do that, but the amount of people that watch my stuff that aren't subscribed, if even 20% of those subscribed, it would make a massive difference, and it would give me more power in terms of getting my hands on more press cars, getting invited to more exciting press launches to beautiful places like this, although the weather has played a bit of its part. Can you believe that a week ago they experienced 27 degrees exactly here, and today, well, as I say, we're looking at 1 to 2 degrees, just insane. But anyway, Guys, take it easy. I'll see you at another video very, very soon. Cheers.